1974.
People weren't going out, they didn't have anything that they could identify with. And mostly what they associated with their Liverpools or the Manchester Uniteds or Arsenals or that. Now this crowd came along and they completely took over the scene. It was an incredible transformation.
Like there's a lot, obviously a lot of people who saw Dublin in 1974 hadn't seen them in 1973. I mean there was a huge kind of like build-up of the fan base.
Oh yeah, but it became respectable. Mm-hmm. The suits started turning up.
That's
at Crow Park.
Yeah,
the long trench coats were starting to appear. Mind you, we couldn't get a ticket for the finals. Like we were still cramming into the hill.
In the hill, yeah.
There was a Greek mathematician, Archimedes, who's famous for jumping out of the bath and shouting "Eureka!" He's also famous for his statement, "Show me a firm place to stand, and I will rule the world." He was obviously talking about Hill 16.
And did you ever go to games together? Did you ever bring him on the hill with you for Dublin?
No, I didn't bring him. No, he didn't bring cultures on the hill. No. The crowd on the hill would be, get the cultures out of here. And it was great crack. Like, you had to be a dub though to be on the hill.
There was a time though when the hill was like it could be 60% Dublin.
Yeah, but we didn't. I wouldn't be going with Mossy to watch.
Well, there's a slight difference there as well because you see this going back nearly 30 years ago. And I was living in Flatland in Rathmines and Rathgar, and he was living in Dalkey.
I see. So there was a class thing going on here. There was a class distinction here.
And there's no doubt about it. The colour was magnificent. The banners were magnificent. The humour on the banners was magnificent. So it was totally new. But then it became a matter that had to be dealt with. One had to be sure that his team going out wasn't just awestruck by the hill, that they anticipated the colour, that they anticipated the noise and the buzz that was there. Because you could very, very easily lose concentration on the primary purpose of getting on with the game.
Did you go into the hill yourself, or
I did,
were you sitting up in the stands?
I went to the hill. I went to the hill starting off. I went to the hill.
There was some crack up there, wasn't there?
We used to see them all sitting up on the wall, and we could look over the canal and you'd see them all sitting on the wall. And it was very hard to get into it. They were queuing all nearly overnight to get in. But I remember going with an uncle of mine, and we came around the back to get into the hill, and there was crowds and crowds and crowds trying to get in. But there was these couple of lads along the wall, and they had ladders. And this two of them, they were charging like £half to get up the ladder. Yeah. I got me Samuel Billy got up the ladder.
£half to get up the ladder? Yeah. That's great.
He made a fortune.
I'm sure he did, yeah. So you ended up on the wall and on the top of the hill?
Yeah. Wow. I did indeed.
A great spot to watch the game from.
It is, but you've got to
keep your wits about you,
yeah. But when the matches start, the atmosphere to be so electric to be like that. Next thing, when we be playing scored, Jesus Christ! But when you see the hill, the sway and the hill, and they all going down, and that, you were safer up on the wall.
On the wall, yeah.
They used to lock up the towns
because
they were afraid of them, And there was one great trip, I think, down to Roscommon when the guys went down. They stampeded a couple of cattle up the street, and this made national headlines. The lads were only having a bit of fun.
Exactly. But there was a sort of fear of them, like this volcano going to come through town.
Well, there were so many of them that supported them. As I said, if they went to play, if they were down to Cork, or Park, or Quiver, to Portlaoise, or to Navan, or Tullamore, wherever they go, there'd be thousands of supporters.
I can remember what Kevin Heffernan said to the team in the aftermath of the Meath match, heading in to play Cork, who were the All-Ireland champions. And, I remember distinctly the night, it was either the week after or very shortly after the Meath match, he finished off our discussion and whatnot with his typical grin and said, "We're going down to these guys. If they think they can come up from Cork, and they're going to get an easy game for us, they got another bucket in coming." And I can remember, again, this scared feeling getting into me saying, "Jesus, this guy's serious."
And there were big names in Cork at that stage, all top-class players. After winning, some of them had won All-Irelands in hurling, they had won the 73 football. I actually watched the Billy Morgan collect the cup in 73. I was a steward on Hill 16 along with Jimmy Keaveney. And I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be nice now to walk up there and collect Sam Maguire.
There was an air of confidence about them, I have to say, that didn't intimidate me in any way, but I knew, having met at that time, that we had a chance in the semi-final. Because Cork won the All-Ireland the year before with a fantastic team.
And I remember it was so obvious. A friend of mine, Charlie McCarthy from Skibbereen, admitted to me about 9 months later that when they left the Clarence Hotel to go to the semi-final, that they actually booked in for the final and they were so confident they would win.
I was marking Jimmy Barrett that day. I had marked him in club championships prior to that, so I knew what I was going into. I knew exactly what the way the Cork forward line was going to play. But I have to say that was Doc's coming of age, because Sean Doherty had a fantastic game on Ray Cummins that day.
I think Paddy Cullen sent a lot of ball down on the wing into Hickey, which we won tremendous ball in that game along the wing, which Cork were slow to cop onto.
So you dealt with Cork, no problem.
No problem, even scored the penalty.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah.
That was another.
I mean, that was a huge responsibility to give you as the Gosson, as you say, on the team. You know,
well,
why was that? Do you think? Why do they want you to step up to take that?
I just positioned myself successfully and practiced them at that time and became the appointed penalty taker if one came up. So it worked.
So
out.
before the game, even you were the if the penalty came up, you were the guy to take it. Yeah?
Oh yeah, geez, otherwise they would have been around on the pitch. We couldn't have had that.
You know, after we beat Cork, I mean, the thing went crazy. You know, we were being offered recording deals, and you know, it was taking off. There was a phenomenal interest in the team from outside football even, and that's really where Kevin, he just took over and he said, "You might never get another chance to win an All-Ireland." These were his words that I remember. "You might never get another chance to win an All-Ireland, and you're not going to waste it, you know, by concentrating on these outside activities," and he just cut them out.
One of the last words from Kevin Heffron going out, he says, "If you expect to find yourself at another All-Ireland final, think about it." He says, "Not many players get an opportunity to play in one All-Ireland final, never mind in two. So you've just got one opportunity and one bite at the cherry."
And I was very confident after the match against Cork that we had the bottle to see out this particular championship.
And the All-Ireland final of 74 is on. And the first to get it is Brian Mullins for Dublin.
And although we were under pressure, I recall, early in the first half, and for a period of the first half, I never had a feeling that we were under extreme, and we were in extreme difficulties, or that we wouldn't be able to pull it round, that our turn would come.
Tommy Sands, Liam Salmon, David Hickey down there in the zone end line, harassing, and it's a goal, Michael Rooney! A goal for Galway, scored by Michael Rooney. Out along the wing now to Anton O'Toole. Anton too quick with the sidestep there for Joe Waldron, and he's still going on. He fits it in, and it is over the bar. Dangerous one, fits it in and over the bar for a point.
So when we went out, needless to say, things weren't running well for us. We were behind at half-time. But even at half-time, there was still a sense of purpose and unity within the group that this game was there to be won and that we could do it.
I don't remember what I would have said to them at half-time, but I would surely have said, "Lads, get out, for God's sake, don't let's blow it at this stage."
Jimmy Keaveney. And Jimmy high and over the bar and the lead for Dublin.
I can remember bringing my young brother down to that particular game. My memories of it was not that I didn't know much about the Dublin team then at that time, but my memory of it was more about the atmosphere and the occasion of it was.
It wouldn't have been the happiest of games for me, because my opponent was Tommy Joe Gilmore, who was one of Galway's best players. My role was to take Tommy Joe Gilmore out of the game. He and I spent a lot of time running around Croke Park that day without the ball.
And Anton O'Toole grabbing a hold of that one. This is Tony Hanaho now for Dublin. This is David Hickey. And it is another point. A lovely move there.
Tony Hanaho was, in fact, one of the most valuable players we had in '74. He was doing a job for us that was so subtle that nobody, when I say nobody, I mean the media or anybody else, understood the role he was playing. And what he was really doing was opening up the approach to goal for us.
And it was a tremendous forward line to play into. I mean, in a subsequent life, tried to recreate it, but you have to have the personnel to do it as well, and you have to have the discipline to stick to that kind of strategy. Certainly, we had that. So to give Tony a compliment on that, I think he led that strategy and kept it organised, because keeping formats like that organised, particularly when they're so dynamic, is a huge job.
This is Tony Hanaho near the end line. John McCarthy, Brian Mullins, and a point for Dublin by Brian Mullins.
And it also indicates that the calibre of the man, like his unselfishness in allowing himself to be used in that fashion with no plaudits attaching to it. So subsequently, of course, people began to realise that the whole thing, the whole forward movement was turning on Tony.
It was a tackle of mine on Liam Salmon, I think it was, or Tom Naughton, that gave away the penalty.
Into the centre to Liam Salmon. Liam Salmon trying to take a shot, and the referee is off for the ball, and it is a penalty.
The critical point in it, I think, was the saving of a penalty by Paddy Cullen from Liam Salmon's.
Well, there's the goalkeeper. The man with number 14 on his back is going to come up there on the left of your picture any moment. Here it comes. And he saved it! He saved it! Oh, Paddy Cullen!
It really determined the last quarter of the game, or the last 10 minutes of the game.
You ever think about, like, you know, Liam Salmon stepping up? I mean, did you try, like, as a goalkeeper, did you just decide to go one way or the other, or did you wait for the shot?
No, I used to walk to the post. He'd put the ball down, whoever it was. He'd look up, see nobody on the goal. Then I'd walk into the middle. Then he looks, and now he sees, well, I either have that 6 or 8 feet, or I have that 6 or 8 feet. So I think that made a difference. I'm not saying that's, but I just worked. It worked quite a few times for me.
And as a result, he saved it, much to my delight, because I wouldn't like to have thought that having given away the penalty, and if they had scored, that it might have been I suppose the catalyst for them to go on and win it. But as it was, in a sense, it was the catalyst for us to go on and win.
This clearance blocked by Brian Mullins to Jimmy Keaveney. And it is over the bar. A lovely point by Jimmy Keaveney. Final whistle, I'm sure not very far away. He's heading up, the referee is heading up towards the centre of the field. He's heading off the field, he's blown the whistle, and the game is over.
February, March, if somebody said to me, you would be All-Ireland champions in September, I would have said, you must be kidding. So, I mean, for us, it was phenomenal. I mean,
a lot of people who would have been GAA fans or GAA traditionalists didn't like this sort of, as they saw it, soccer element creeping into games.
No, they didn't like the razzmatazz. And I remember at the All-Ireland final that year, when Sean Doherty got the cup, the microphone broke down, and as a result, there was no speeches. And the Cork Examiner wrote the following day, there was an alien atmosphere in Croke Park yesterday. I jest you not.
The subsequent celebrations were out in what was then the Kildare Hotel. I think it's the Ambassador. We had to go outside of Dublin practically to celebrate.
Hip hip! Hip hip!
Tree spirit. Welcome home, Sam.
When we stopped off in my house, a couple of us on the way out to the Kildare, and the folks, they'd no drink in the house, so the lads got sherry. They got to drop a sherry. So we hightailed it out of there quickly enough and continued on.
So, I mean, you guys would go out there with 72,000 and you wouldn't sort of really be aware of the crowd, or?
I must say the crowd in the game against Cork, the previous thing was the first time, the noise of that situation, and that was a smaller crowd than the final. That was a big, that really was a
it kind of went up a decibel.
That really was a decibel that day. But I always enjoyed it. I mean, I certainly played better in front of a big crowd. You probably played better doing a movie in Los Angeles.
The stakes are higher. Yeah. My acting is terrible in Raheny. You know?
Yeah, I know, exactly. And it'd be the same for us, you know. I mean, a big crowd, playing in Croke Park.
The occasion.
Live cameras. You get action that way, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The Dublin team emerging as it did was suddenly kind of a change in direction. I mean, they almost like saved the GAA in terms of from extinction in Dublin in many ways. That team at that time.
It was a big thing in schools where soccer still wasn't allowed being played, but so many guys just flew in the face of that. I went to Western Road Christian Brothers, which was in the heart of the city, and I remember fellas having hassle all the time and wouldn't show up on a Wednesday because they'd go and play a soccer match instead. And probably in the 70s, when the Dublin team came along, yes, it did. It revitalised a culture that was slipping away just by default, because we were getting exposed more and more on television and in newsreels to English soccer.
As a Dublin man, I suppose you'd be proud that your city has won something, no matter what sport it would be. But I would have to be brutally honest in that I came from an era where, when I went to school first, if with one exception, ourselves, because we were steeped in shower and I went to the Christian Brothers, if you were seen to be playing soccer or going to soccer matches, you were in serious trouble in your school. And I would have been one of those people that would have had a lot of disrespect for the GAA at that particular time because of their attitude. Now, I must say, in today's age, I find that the stadium they've built down there and the people that are involved in the GAA, there's a sense within them that they want to change and they want to come into the era which we're now living in.
And if you look at what happened, say, 1990, then when the World Cup came along, and there was a certain threat to the GAA. What saved it the following year? 4 games against Meath.
Yeah.
You know, there was a phenomenal interest swung back in favour of, you know, and again I think it was because there was a city team there. And I think it's really important for Gaelic games that there is a strong city team for people to, you know, to compete against.
I always felt like Dublin had a huge, and certainly going to school as a kid, like in the 50s and 60s, I always felt like everybody I knew, their man and dad were from the country, you know, it seemed, except for mine.
Well, my man and dad came from, respectively, from Killorglin and from Glencalry and County Mayo, and they met through Irish language kind of circles in Dublin. But they were one of the very first suburbs out in Sandymount. They were the first settlers there. So I was born out of those settlers. Right. So I was somebody who was experiencing, you know, the Dublin experience, and I was bringing it home to them. They weren't used to it. And consequently, I think that was happening all over, and I think that this is why our Dublin identity, our metropolitan identity, was getting stronger and stronger during the 70s.
It was relatively, you know, there were relatively good times. So when you finish school at 17, I'm not going to work on the bank.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to I'm not going to go into the civil service. I didn't want to do that, but I had an option then.
But you were selling programs, and were you kind of like seeing games where which was feeding your fantasy or feeding your desire?
Oh yeah, definitely. I can remember great occasions in Croke Park, and again it would have to be said that it was before the onset of the medium of television. Like we used to be requested to provide boys to go into Croke Park of a Sunday and be available to sell programmes. Now, the other clubs in Dublin were afforded the same opportunity, so it was a unique thing for Dublin clubs and Dublin youngsters to be able to do that. Really? Because you used to have to, like an ant, go off down and end up maybe in O'Connell Street, and you'd have the whole lot sold, crowd coming. You'd go further and further. You were like,
to be the first programme selling.
Yeah. And like people would be rushing, and you'd be standing in front of them, and they'd sooner buy the programme off you than trip over you, you know. And then when you see, as soon as you had your 100 or your 200 sold, you were a free agent, and you had access to Croke Park, and you had money in your pocket at that stage because you got a percentage.
Jeez, I wish I'd known about that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
How come I was in O'Connell's? How come we were never asked to go sell programmes in Croke Park?
Well, O'Connell's were a bit snooty.
I was on the dance committee in O'Connell School, I remember at the time, and we actually booked Skid Row one time, so we probably had dealings. Did you manage Skid Row at the time?
I did, yeah. Jesus, O'Connell, you were on that. No wonder you made your money.
Yeah.
Jesus, you used to do.
No, I wasn't. We did great business there. We did.
You did, yeah. There used to be 1,500 nearly on a Saturday night.
Yeah, we had a very good dance committee because we'd always put it back into the next gig and all that.
Right, yeah.
But the committee would kind of we'd get the take, get it in, count it up, sort it out, get it down to the banks of the night safe, and it was, and then we could go off and have a few pints while the concert was on. You know?
And you were drinking at that stage?
But we were senior boys then, you know.
Christ almighty, if I was drinking at that age, I was in trouble.
O'Connell's, we could never beat you guys, you know. Yes, you were the academy of football.
Your lads of O'Connell's played with Fitz. It's like fellas like
Ollie Freeney was O'Connell.
Ollie Freeney.
Was it Tim Manny O'Connell?
Dennis Manny, Tim Manny, Jimmy Lavin.
The great academy of football that was Joey's, of course, would have started here because this was the feeder. This was the feeder school for Joey's.
You can imagine this yard we're in here now. You wouldn't see it happening nowadays with the health and safety, but about 500-600 kids at lunchtime and maybe 2 balls. And if you got 1 kick of the ball in a half an hour, you're doing very well for yourself. But everybody was running after ball.
And then when the Rare Old Times came out, I recorded in '77, it became associated with the team. Some of them started singing it on the hill, and I was, you know, then everyone was singing it in the pubs after, and we were trying to get as many Dublin songs as we could get into.
The bombings, they sucked the heart out of the city for a time, and they dented this